And welcome back to Sunday Square Off. Elections-related bills are making their way through the legislature. One of them would create an election fraud hotline and allow police into polling places to investigate potential election fraud. The Republican-sponsored bill narrowly passed the House by just one vote. It now sits in the state Senate. State Representative Athena Salmon of Tempe is a top Democrat on the House Elections Committee. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is one of several elections bills every session. This one would flesh out the Attorney General's new office created to investigate election fraud. Let's give folks some of the details. The AG would have to create a toll-free number and website to take election fraud complaints. Complaints could not be anonymous. It also authorizes police to enter a polling place to investigate a complaint, and the results of all investigations must be widely reported. They're going to go out to a lot of people, whether proved or not. Just the results. The legislature gave AG Mark Brnovich's office $500,000 last year to investigate fraud. Do you know how the AG has spent that money?
No, we do not. We know that he hired Jennifer Wright, who is a well-known Tea Partier here in Arizona that had, prior to being at the Attorney General's office, was ushering voter suppression efforts in specifically the 2012 election. So we can get kind of an impression of where that election integrity unit is heading.
She's an assistant AG as part of that unit. Has any evidence of election fraud been presented to the legislature?
No, not at all. We've heard allegations of it, but when we ask for concrete proof, that always comes up empty, because the reality is, you know, this is code words for voter suppression. The hotline that's being created is more accurately described as a voter suppression hotline. We know that this was a tactic used by the Republicans in the 1980s to post police officers outside of polling places to intimidate voters of color. And so this hotline would enable and legalize that kind of behavior and those kind of voter suppression efforts to occur in the 2020 election.
It does require folks to give their name, address, identifying information, so it can't be anonymous, correct?
It can't be anonymous, but when the Arizona Mirror posted this article talking about this voter suppression hotline, the first comment on the article was from a woman who was in her identity talking about how she was going to call it 100 times to report Democrats who are voting. So, again, our elections are safe and secure. In Arizona, we have a very robust system. And when allegations are made of irregularities, there's oftentimes not concrete evidence or proof. And so this is part of the Republican Party's efforts to suppress the vote. And in fact, the Republican Party signed in supporting this bill, as well as a local gun lobby group. I
want to get to this issue of police at the polling places, because I know this was reported as allowing police to be stationed in the front of polling places. That, reading the language, that's not what's allowed. They can go in to investigate, correct?
Correct. And so under Jennifer Wright in 2012, she posted conservative activists predominantly in front of polling precincts that were majority people of color. So I imagine that kind of effort where people are reporting suspicious activity, they call the hotline. The hotline then can allow law enforcement to go to those polling places to further investigate. But in the eyes of the Democrats, that is to intimidate voters of color.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. State Representative Athena Salmon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.